Welcome back to the Inside Line IndyCar podcast presented by IndyStar. Back from not our home and not our native land is Zion Brown, who is up in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area in Markham, Ontario. And how was your trip? You just told me that you drove.
Yeah, it was all right. The drive, everybody I told them I drove was like, "Oh my goodness, that's insane." I was like, it wasn't that bad. You split it in half around Detroit. The way back yesterday had some annoying stoppages, but I'm back. I made it there and back, so that was the goal, and that's what happened.
I was going to say, I know the drive to and from Detroit very well, and I know the drive from Detroit to Toronto moderately okay. I have not done it from Indy to the GTA, but I'm sure you had copious amounts of Tim Hortons to power you through.
Well, yes and no. So I'm not a coffee guy. But I did go to Tim Hortons. I didn't hit our, what was it, 4.5, 3.5?
3.5.
3.5. I went twice. I went once on the way up and once on the way back. I didn't get it on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. But yes, I did have some Tim Hortons. I got the Timbits. Very, very good. Most of them. I think the point of it is for you to find out which flavors you like, kind of. And so some of the flavors I was like, this is kind of dry, but many of them were incredible.
Favorite one?
Oh God. I'm blanking on the name. The one with the strawberry in the middle. It's like glazed and in the middle has like strawberry. Okay. That was my favorite.
So I had this conversation in the office the other day about Timbits specifically, and this person said their favorite flavor was sour cream. Did you happen to try sour cream?
I don't think any of the ones I had were sour cream, and I'm thankful for that.
No, I promise you, it is surprisingly good.
I just feel like that's something I got to take your word for, and only your word.
No, you have to try it. I will say, it's not my favorite. Like, they have like a confetti cake one that's pretty good, but I do like the sour cream ones. I remember when I found out it was sour cream, I was surprised to learn that it was sour cream. So that maybe lightens that for you. But I thought it was a great over-under because I just kind of picked an arbitrary number of 3.5. And then when I was thinking about it on Saturday, I was like, he's going to be up there for 4 days. So that's only once a day to hit the over. That was a pretty good number. Maybe I'm in the wrong industry.
No, I mean, I don't think that was a bad number that you said on your point. I will say that Friday was a much longer day than we thought it would be, so I didn't really do much outside of the track on Friday. And I guess as a result of Friday being as long as it was, while also not having anything happen, Saturday also became a longer day. So my exploration of the GTA was honestly close to nothing. So your number was okay, but then it got a little bit thrown off by the circumstances of why I was actually in the city. So.
Well, I guess let's start there. I'm already tearing up the rundown. I remember you were in Detroit, and when you sent us a message and said, I'm in Detroit, and I was like, oh no, something happened at customs. That was my first thought. But no, you had a message saying that Markham is a mess.
Yeah.
And what, 4 or 5 hours later, you found out for yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I had stopped in Detroit to eat my lunch and head over. And like you said, I gotten a few different messages that were that essentially sounded the alarms. Okay, there is something wrong here as far as the preparation for this race goes. And so I was like, oh, okay, 4 hours away. So I got to kind of wait to eyeball it. But let me, I appreciate the people that messaged me. A couple other media members, and Crash Gladys tagged me on Twitter and was like, do you know what's going on? I was like, I'm not there yet. But that automatically kind of put the warnings up for me. So I made a couple texts and calls from people who I know who were there. And I got, I would say, mixed answers about the level of preparation of that track. And then I went on Friday morning to the track walk that had been rescheduled, and it looked terrible. Obviously, you could tell they were behind, no doubt about that. I wasn't sure that IndyCar practice was going to start at 3:05 like it was supposed to, but I think I was under the impression that the big issue was the tire packs. I was under the impression that there were more tires that were actually at the venue at the moment that were just waiting to be installed. And as we learned throughout the day, like, no, they still had to, Green Savary Racing Promotion still had to acquire many of the tires used for tire packs to make tire barriers. And so that became a whole issue, and nothing happened that day. And I think my biggest problem with it, as somebody who was there, because there wasn't much to do inside, spent a lot of my time outside on Friday just seeing what was happening. And I think my biggest issue with how that went was the lack of communication to fans. It's a free day. There were a lot of people in the grandstands on Friday. And I think for most of the day, most of the people there didn't know what was going on. Like, there weren't really public address announcements given for it or anything like that. Like, there were definitely, USF 2000 and that series, and NASCAR Canada and IndyCar were giving the updates that they could on social media. But if you're not refreshing your Twitter every 5 minutes, like I was, you don't know what's going on. And I think that was kind of my biggest issue with the way that everything went, even to the point where we get to the end of the day, IndyCar had notified the teams that there wasn't going to be a practice on Friday. I'm in the paddock. Cars are being packed back into transporters. I see a handful of drivers walk past me to go back to their hotels. And to this point, there was no social media message, nor was there a public address a message in there. And I was just like, okay, we get that things happen. Obviously, this was a failure on the preparation side, whether you want to blame Green Savary or IndyCar, whatever, between the two of them, there was a failure there. But the overall lack of communication was really upsetting. I'm sure many of the fans there felt the same way.
Green Savary or Green Savory? I'm not sure. But
don't ask me how to say things.
I was going to go with Savory, but anyway, Indianapolis-based company. They manage motorsports events, and for those around IndyCar and who have been around, probably or maybe at least as a result of this weekend, know that they handle the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the season opener, of course, also Mid-Ohio and Portland. And so, pretty experienced, have worked with IndyCar. And I know there were a lot of, I think, parallels drawn to when Nashville did the street race, to just some of the issues with trying to set up a track for the first time, and it's all new, right? But for a company that's pretty experienced and has done this at several other events with IndyCar, just surprising, especially when you move the race out of downtown Toronto, because they're hosting the FIFA World Cup games at, I think is it BMO Field, the soccer stadium there, I believe.
Yeah.
And so you can't hold the IndyCar race because they're setting up for the World Cup, and it wouldn't have been torn down in time if you did it, in July, because anyway, the World Cup got in the way. So that's why they had to move it to Markham. So yes, it is a first time setup at this particular location, but this is a pretty experienced group in charge of this. And I thought it was interesting. I thought from a if you take a step back and look at it from a PR standpoint, which we geek out over that because we do words for a living, but I thought it was just very interesting, the position of IndyCar that was like, okay, we're gonna they're just like, here, you can take the blame. we're gonna give it to you. We're putting this on you. And I thought it's interesting because, as I mentioned, they work with them at other courses. I assume they have contracts to work with them in the future still. And then Green Savary was just like, no mention, no apology, just see you tomorrow.
Yeah, Well, one, what stands out to me, or not stands out, but something that I think should be addressed. I'm pretty sure the schedule is almost done for next year, or if it's not, maybe this should be addressed. Is that Portland and Markham should not be back to back. I think what we saw in this is that Green Savory did not exhibit capacity to put back-to-back races together. Whether that's fair or not, to say they can never do it or never figure it out, it's not up to me. But I do think that we saw enough this weekend to say, hey, maybe let's not give this company back-to-back races in separate countries that are across the continent from each other. I think that is enough to maybe ask going forward. As far as these two races go, or any of the other races that Green Savory is a part of. But I was really shocked at the statement given by the track, just because, like we said, there was no real apology in there. I've got my gripes with the Doug Bowles statement. Not that he said anything wrong, but it pushing all the blame to the promoter and not kind of just saying, hey, we failed to inspect this or to kind of oversee this. To me, there's an issue with that, because at the end of the day, it's an IndyCar event and people are going to remember it as an IndyCar event. Even if the promoter changes in the future, people are going to say, hey, remember when this happened with IndyCar, not with remember when this happened with Green Savory. And we know we have this DC race coming up that we'll talk about more today. And what we've heard about this DC race over and over and over again is how many times Bud Denker has gone to DC and been in the Oval Office or the Capitol and been figuring all these things out. And he's rented an apartment in DC. And I think all that stuff is great. It's what you would hope for an event of that magnitude, I guess I would say. But at the same time, you had another new street race in August. And it feels to me that the DC race was given so much attention, and we still don't know how that's going to go, but we know it's been given, I feel comfortable saying it's been given more diligence and attention than Markham. And it feels like this other race was kind of left to the wayside as far as IndyCar's supervision over the promoter. And we saw the result of that on Friday.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of the conversation. Like, part of me wonders too, if I mean, I guess part of me wonders if they've there's layers to it. Part of me wonders if the attention went to DC because they're familiar with the promoter and Green Savory. They're familiar with at least the GTA, the Toronto market. And so maybe they were less concerned about Markham overall. And knowing that how big a deal Freedom 250 is to this country, obviously being the United States, the fact that this was fast-tracked and it was something that President Trump wanted. There's all the security issues from clearance to setup and, I mean, just everything that comes with not only being in the nation's capital, but having the president there. I mean, I can understand and I think even forgive them for that. It is interesting. The more and more I think about this and talk about it, it is kind of like an FU to Canada, but also was the prime minister there? Like, I don't know. Maybe the prime minister was there and I just missed it.
I didn't hear anything about it.
Like, I can see though, like why this race is being given special treatment in DC. Because there's just a lot of different layers to it that you wouldn't have in a suburb of, I mean, forget that this is in Canada or Toronto, but like, let's say this was a new race in Denver, one that, a city that's been rumored. Like, I don't know that they're giving that much attention to Denver even, or any other American city that they would put a new race in.
Right, yeah, and I guess I'm not vouching for Markham to have gotten the same amount of attention as DC got. But what I'm saying is that we clearly saw that whatever attention it was given by IndyCar, it wasn't enough, is maybe my point there. And, I'd even compare it to the attention given to Arlington and say, I'd like to kind of know, once again, just how many trips were taken and such and such, just things like that. And technically, Penske Entertainment was one of the 3 promoters for Arlington, and they weren't any of the promoters for Markham. So that is at least a little bit of a difference, but it just definitely felt like, I mean, we had Arlington, which was, I couldn't find anybody to speak poorly about it. It was so well done from a logistical standpoint. The race was solid. And we'll see how it continues going forward, if it gets better or worse, but I couldn't find anybody to speak poorly about what happened there. And then you get to Markham and it's just behind on the preparation. And there's some other, minor issues I heard from fans, like TV monitors that were supposed to be up in certain viewing areas that weren't. So some fans didn't get to see nearly as much of the race as they thought they would, things like that. And so there has to be, something that gives going into next year, because this is a 5-year deal for those who don't know. So we will have at least 4 more Markham races. And so going forward, there's got to be more attention given to this, at least for next year, to make sure that the setup and the overall experience is just a little bit better than it was this weekend.
And I think one of the, there's a lot of, there's just so much about this weekend, but like even the Fox booth not being set up, and there are a lot of questions of like I don't know how much you were in tune with this, but like being here and sitting at home in the, we don't call it the GIA, but the greater Indy area, like there's a lot of confusion about where stuff was and wasn't being shown. Because at first, like, qualifying was just going to be streamed only, is the word I remember. And then I have, baseball on FS1, and there's something on the ticker that's like qualifying starting on FS2. I was like, oh, okay, I can watch on FS2. And then but that was just like in the middle of qualifying. So it was just kind of weird messaging wise. The Fox booth allegedly not being set up in early enough time, although I've seen Will for the DC race is already hyping up the booth that they have for the Freedom 250. So it sounds like things are ahead of schedule there comparatively. There were also the unfinished, I assume they were going to be hotels or apartments, but the unfinished towers overlooking the course in Markham that evidently Aero McLaren was allowed to have their spotters on, which, like, I don't know how safe that building was since it wasn't being finished constructed. I don't know if other teams were also doing the same thing, but that was, I don't know. It was funny to me, it was funny to see that on social media, and it just added another question for me about how this whole weekend went down. All that to be said, I think once we got to Sunday and the grid was set and we had a race, I thought it was highly entertaining. Won by Marcus Ericsson, who there was some question of Andretti's strategy and whether or not they're going to be able to pull it off. But once they got green after the last caution, he was flying around the track and just catching anyone in sight. It was shaping up to be a great story for Romain Grosjean, looking for his first win and being one of the elder statesmen of the paddock, and doing it for Dale Coyne Racing. I mean, leading as long as he did, and I know I believe he had to fuel save there toward the end to try to hit a number, but he was looking great. And then Marcus Ericsson just was passing everybody. And I think for me, when he passed Palou, I was like, he's going to win this thing. He has enough laps to get there. And he won it, and he was flying away from everyone.
Yeah, to go back and look at Marcus Ericsson, who I want to say was like 15 laps left, he was in 7th. And to look at the final box score, and he won by 7.5 seconds. It's just like crazy to look at. But yeah, I was glad that the race ended with that car winning, not necessarily the driver. Obviously, the driver was a big part of it. But when you look at this race and how chaotic it was, I felt like the winner deserved to be somebody who drove their tail off while managing to keep it off the wall, because we saw Louis Foster wall it. We saw Kyle Kirkwood, who I think would have had a decent chance to win the race, do the same thing. And that's what we saw all weekend, right? Will Power in practice, same thing with Kyle Collette in practice. So we saw all these guys that were fast. Mick Schumacher, same thing, just sending it to the wall because this was a tricky track. And to me, with all due respect to the fuel savers at the front, Grosjean, and that he had the Penske's behind him for a while, and I mean most of the people that ended up the front, all the front four finishers had 2 pit stops, but Ericsson's fuel saving stint was essentially in the middle, not at the end. And so for me, I was really pleased by the fact that Marcus Ericsson, I don't want to say he had to be perfect, but he had to pull off quite a few passes to get back to the front on that last stint. And I love the fact that he ended up doing that and winning the race that way rather than Romain Grosjean's number 18 car limping to the finish line.
Yeah, it was certainly fascinating. It was just exciting to see someone with such pace and speed. And really, like you mentioned Kirkwood's crash, I think it was a great day for Andretti all around. I mean, Will Power finished third from the back of the grid, which that's the second time we've seen that out of IndyCar driver this season. But yeah, like Andretti, tip of the cap to them. Like they had a great weekend. I think Will was even the one who mentioned, at least on the TV interview, that they probably had a good shot to lock out the podium had Kyle not sent it into the wall like Louis Foster did. But I think something that stuck out to me last week was Will Power during an interview just mentioned that he was having fun. And like for someone who has had so much IndyCar success like he has, and now being in his first year with a new team, they've had a lot of opportunities to bond over some pretty frustrating moments early in the year. But like it feels like to me you can see that in his driving too. Like it just seems like he's freer, looser, not in the sense of the car, but just like it just seems like he's driving a lot more confidently. Of course, there was the crash Saturday, the mistake that eventually caused him to not qualify very well. But yeah, it's interesting how like Andretti early in the year I felt like was struggling, maybe aside from Kirkwood. I remember Will had a good showing at Arlington too. But like it just seemed like there was a lot of struggles early in the year as a team in totality. There's questions of whether or not Marcus Ericsson was going to be back. There's been questions, maybe not like serious questions within the team, but definitely people wondering if Will Power would even come back for another year. And now like I feel like everything is flipped and it seems like everything is rosy with Andretti.
Right, yeah, and I screenshot this. Someone posted this on Reddit earlier today. Over the last 4 races, points scored, it's Alex Palou 1, Pato O'Ward 2, Marcus Ericsson 3, and Will Power 4. And so that shows you really since Detroit, where Will Power, was going to finish top 5 before the thing with he and Scott McLaughlin. Since then, it's been really solid for him. He hasn't quite been in a spot to win, unless you want to count this weekend as being in the spot to win. But you could definitely tell he feels more comfortable. He told us that on Friday before the weekend even began too. And there was a onboard audio that Andretti posted. I can't remember if it was on Monday or Tuesday here, but they posted it, and it's right at the moment when they were running 1, 2, 3. I think Marcus was 1 and Will was 2 and Kyle was 3, or maybe switch Will and Kyle. But he said on his onboard, this is Will saying, I want us to finish 1, 2, 3. So let me know what I need to do for that. And he said, I don't care who finishes 1. I just want it to be 1, 2, 3. I thought that was a really cool moment to hear on the onboard. And then you heard when Marcus passed him on the hairpin, his frustration with the fact that Marcus was not supposed to do that. Will was going to let him by on the straightaway, on the much, easier to navigate straightaway upcoming. But Marcus was trying to pass both Will and Alex Palou at the same time. And it almost ended up disastrous. But, he was mad about that for maybe the next lap or so. And then after that, he let it go. And he was still really happy to see Marcus win the race. So, yeah, you're right. This team is coming together well chemistry-wise. you love to see it for Marcus. I talked about why I love to see his car win the race. Now I'll talk about why I love to see the person win the race. And he's talked about just all the work he's put in to come back, because we've seen this situation before with whoever it may be. It felt like he was a lame duck driver coming into this year. Like, we can be honest about it. You finished 15th and 20th in back-to-back years in an Andretti car. You're probably not getting extended. But he talked about spending more time around the team and the personnel to get comfortable with them, just doing small things, driving more sports cars over the offseason to stay in a car, and just all these things that he's done to really start to feel like himself again this season. And he's talked about it all throughout the season. And he said on Sunday, like, I knew this moment was coming. He was like, I'm not surprised to be here. I knew that if we just kept going for it, this moment was coming. And so certainly a very exciting and really just congratulatory moment for Marcus Ericsson, because if you asked me at the beginning of the season, I would have said he's off of the Andretti team and, maybe not in a full-time IndyCar ride. Like, I think because we know how good Marcus Ericsson is at IMS, who always have, not always, but who'll have a 500 ride for quite some time, but a full-time ride, I think saying he wasn't going to have one wasn't out of the question coming into this year. And now he's going to be sticking with this team, and he delivered his first win for them after really not coming all that close in his first two seasons.
Yeah. Tip of the cap to him. Will Power, Andretti, great weekend for them. Was looking to be a great weekend for Louis Foster until he sent it into, well, I shouldn't say he sent it into the wall. He clipped a barrier and then went head into a wall. But he had the fastest car all weekend until Ericsson's late push. And, I mean, Louis looked great. And to see that out of an RLL was, I think, really impressive. Again, another guy who we had a lot of questions about. And then you talked with him early in the weekend, I think. And he gets, he confirms he's going to be back. And I just think we have seen this several times this year where we have that confirmation. I think about Christian Rasmussen at Gateway. You have that confirmation, that public confirmation that you're going to be back for the next season. And you go out and you just race differently. And Louis Foster looked like the best car all weekend until that crash. I mean, I thought he was going to win, and I wasn't sure it was going to be a good race. And like I'm being honest though, he just had that kind of pace all weekend, and then unfortunately for him, he ended up in the wall.
Right. I'd be curious to know if Louis Foster had this exact same pace in the race next year, if he just wins it. Because the reason he was pushing so hard is because he got thrown off by all the cautions and he was behind on pit strategy, and he still would have had a really good chance to win this race. As we saw, he was about to pass Marcus Ericsson, I believe, for third at the time, maybe fourth, but he was making more passes to get right back toward the front. And then he sends it into the wall. So I think if this is a race that has 3 cautions instead of 6, I think Louis Foster probably does just kind of go wire to wire to an extent and wins the race. But that's not how it went. And he crashed and wrecked out of the race. You mentioned the contract thing. I will say his situation is a little different than like a Christian Rasmussen or a Marcus Ericsson, because we've all known that Louis Foster is under contract for 2027. So it wasn't news to learn that he had a contract. I just asked him. I just wanted to make sure that there was no clause or nothing that was going to make RLL want to send him away because now they're losing a car. So I don't think it's the same thing for him as it was for Rasmussen or Ericsson, where they, I think at one point or another, were legitimately not sure if they were coming back. I think with Louis, he had to make sure after they sold one of those charters, and he told us he got that assurance. And so he'll be back next year. And yeah, it was devastating to see somebody who has never finished higher than 7th, who RLL clearly believes in quite a bit by giving him a decently long contract. And they think this guy who won Indy Next a couple of years ago really is kind of like a star in the making. They didn't want Andretti to kind of scoop him up from under them, because that's the team he raced for in Indy Next, right? It was kind of similar to the Dennis Hauger situation that we have going on right now. Instead RLL kind of solidified that they would be keeping Louis Foster. So this team believes in him, and it looked like he was going to have, at the very least, let's just call it a podium finish, which would have been the first podium finish of his career. And you could just tell the frustration on his part. Both he and Kyle Kirkwood talked about the lack of radius walls and just how if you clip one of these walls that they were driving on this weekend, that it feels like it's bound to just derail the car in a way that they feel like shouldn't happen. But at the end of the day, they both knew what the walls were coming into the weekend, and they were the ones that just barely lost it. But it was sad, specifically with Louis Foster, because of, like you said, the fact that he was the fastest all weekend.
Louis Foster, the native of England, who heads to the Freedom 250 with a livery that is going to pay homage to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You think, is this Graham Rahal playing a, I guess it's not a prank because it's reality, but is this, some sort of scheme to poke fun at the English here? What are we doing?
I don't know if I want to
give to weigh in. I need Will to weigh in on this.
I don't know if I want to give Graham Rahal that much creative credit for this, but no, there's definitely an irony to it. That the fact that they had Louis, of all of them, drive that car. But yeah, I've been like iffy on some of the liveries that I've seen, the USA inspired liveries. Some of them I think look better than others. Penske has 3 of them. I really only like Scott McLaughlin's. But yeah, I think Louis is fine. But yeah, that is kind of funny, that the irony that does exist there.
Yeah, I don't know. That posted obviously this afternoon, a short while ago, and I was like, that's funny. Pretty good. Romain Grosjean, I don't think we expected to see him up front, even though, I mean, really, when you look at his weekend, like he had a good weekend. I feel like Coyne, this is like, what, 2 weekends in a row that they've qualified pretty well? Like, so, I mean, like, I don't know if Coyne's turning a corner or what, but they definitely are figuring some things out during qualifying. And then Romain darn near had this thing won.
Yeah, I mean, they completely gambled on the pit strategy. He pitted the second time, maybe pretty much both times he pitted before most of the others that ended up leading the race. And he got lucky because the second time he pitted, he came out, and as he was leaving the pit box, I think that was the Kirkwood crash. And so that put him in what turned out to be a tremendous position for the rest of the race. And he just had to do what he could to fight off those cars. And he had 90, I think it was 94 seconds of push to pass. And because of the fuel situation, he couldn't even use it, which I know has to be like, I can just imagine that terrible position in the cockpit where you're like, I know I have this, but if I use it, I don't know if I'm making it to the finish line. And in his position specifically, if he doesn't make the finish line, that jeopardizes his leader circle, which I think also would jeopardize a contract extension. And so like he had to protect a podium finish in a way that, didn't allow him to actually fight for the win there at the end, unfortunately for him. But he was still, he did say he cried a little bit, but he was mainly, energetic about it and just kind of pumped up at the fact that happened. And this is what you love about new races, right? We're going to get something somewhat similar this weekend, but nobody knows the strategy. I don't think anybody really knew whether they needed 2 or 3 pit stops to get through the end here and whatnot. And Dale Coyne gambled with Romain specifically, and it worked out extremely well. And it was so funny, too, because I don't know how you felt watching it, but when Alex Palou got to 1.3 seconds behind Romain Grosjean, I was like, are we really going to have this, this hectic, chaotic race happen just for Alex Palou to win it? And then he and Palou had a wiggle in turn 4, I believe it was, that really just ruined the rest of his race, and he ended up getting passed by the 2 Andretti cars as well. So it was amazing to see Romain have this moment. I think he has now surpassed David Malukas for most second place finishes without a win in his IndyCar career. So I think he's second or third all time now in that list. maybe David Malukas will get another one or two before he gets his win, and they'll trade back and forth. But those two both are making history in the wrong way, maybe. But it was cool to see Romain, have by far his best race of the season, as somebody who, once again, we'll get into silly season talk in a moment here, has not yet signed an extension. You have some people, and it feels like it's, just a matter of semantics when it comes to him and Dale Coyne. Other people aren't quite sure, but I'm sure that this podium finish helped quite a lot, if I had to guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It did make me think, like we've kind of talked about who rose and who slid. There was like some debate, not even debate. There was some mention at the end of like how it just seemed like the Hondas had the extra oomph in this race, and the Chevys kind of fell back. But then you had Pato and Christian finish 5th and 6th, so they kind of like they had like fallen even lower than that, and then climbed their way back a little bit.
But those two,
stretch, I think,
those two guys did 3 pit stops though.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't on the fuel saving strategy. So I think that's the reason they didn't fall back.
Right. But yeah, it was just like interesting. I don't know.
Scott McLaughlin fell back to 8th. David Malukas hit the wall and had to pit, so he ended up a lap down. Which is the funny thing with all of this is that Alex Palou has extended his championship lead, and I meant to check and just do the math, or have somebody else do the math for me. I believe it's as simple as he wins this week and he's the champion. I believe. I need to do the math again myself. I'm pretty sure that's it. So we had all this and a Palou. That's the thing about Palou. We've talked about it before. Is like his bad finishes it's a P4, and it's still better than Kyle Kirkwood and David Malukas, the two guys he's fighting with for the championship. So, but yeah, it's another all Honda podium, 2nd in a row and 5th this year. So impressive stuff as far as those engines holding up, at least to the finish line. I can't remember which cars it were. There were a few cars that actually did not make it around the cooldown lap. Off the top of my head, I don't even remember which ones they were. But with as many cars fuel saving as there were, that was kind of bound to happen. And I thought that was hilarious. The teams had to go get the cars on track once they were actually cleared to go out there.
Yeah. We mentioned Louis Foster. His teammate Graham Rahal finished 9th. And also want to point out Stingray Robb finished 11th. And Stingray's best finish is 9th, which he's done twice. So not far off. But
good day. A good day for Juncos. Once again, Arenas just finds his way.
Oh man,
in the top 10. He's finished 7th.
Yeah, and really, I felt like he raced better than that. Just kind of fell off there toward the end. I felt like.
Yeah, he had. I mean, this is what I love about this race, and I hope it stays this way really going forward. Is this race was one that was about resilience, because Arenas had some moments where he had contact with other drivers. He lost spots quite a bit throughout the race and had to gain those spots, here and there. And so that's what I loved about this race. And I hope that it stays the same going forward, where you have to be resilient to win it. And you have to kind of, fight through some mess to win it. We talked about how terrible the hairpin was, or whatever, not terrible, but how, catastrophic it was at times. And Marcus Ericsson on the last stint made 3 passes in the hairpin, and so it's like stuff like that is like, I think if this race is categorized in the future by whoever can overcome the most ridiculous circumstances, I think it'll continue to be kind of one of the more fun races of the year, because I don't know where you would rank it, but this is probably my top 3 or 4 so far this season.
Yeah, it was great. And I think a lot of it had to do with the unknowns and also the hairpin. And I've seen some debates on socials about the hairpin of like how some people think it's terrible, but like I thought it was the most fascinating part of the race, just because when you have cars going side by side in the turning radius, like that's a really tough turn, a really tough pass, and we saw I think the word of the weekend seemed to be carnage, but I would say chaos of that hairpin. And some people are saying you should extend it out or maybe shift it a different way so that you have to, point a little different way coming out of the hairpin. But like, honestly, why change it? I thought it was great.
I'm with you. What I didn't know or expect when we talked about the hairpin on our show last week, I didn't realize I did the track walk, just quite the elevation that it had to it. Like even I watched the video of Will Power doing the sim, and I don't think the sim quite captured the elevation portion of it to the way it was in real life. And I was walking up it on Friday morning, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be fascinating, right? I was already intrigued by it last week, and then I got there and I was like, this is going to be something, and it was. It was hilarious watching the junior categories race on this track. Like, as ridiculous as it was with the IndyCar race, you can imagine it was also just as funny and unpredictable with, teenagers doing this track. So watching the USF categories and even NASCAR Canada on Saturday do this track was hilarious. And so, yeah, I hope they keep the hairpin the same. I know the dimensions of the track weren't actually what they were supposed to be. It was supposed to be 2.19 miles, but once it was actually built, it was 2.1 exactly. And so I don't know, what changes there will be made, but I kind of hope that for the most part, it remains the same track going forward, even if IndyCar and Green Savory kind of stumbled upon what happened on Sunday.
Yeah, I loved it. You seem to enjoy Tim Hortons. I'm sure Alex Palou smashed many ketchup chips, which also the FIFA are there today. And I saw that they were trying the ketchup chips last night. So I guess something to talk about, shared experiences. But no, I'm in on the hairpin. Again, until you're white knuckling that thing with a guardrail that's already folded over around the side of a mountain, like, I don't know. I guess I just have a little less sympathy for professional drivers. Maybe I should have a little more sympathy, but I don't know. Like,
I don't think all of them hated it. There were some that did. Alex Palou said he wants, parts of it to change just so it can be a little bit more smoother to drive on.
Easier to win.
Yeah, I guess. Then I asked Scott Dixon about it. He said he didn't really have any problems with it specifically. So, to each their own. And I think that it'd be in the best interest of the racing product if Markham essentially kept this track the same going forward.
Yeah. Silly season, we have some reports out there, I'll say. We kind of hit on Louis and Mick already. We kind of hit on that already. So Louis Foster back with Graham Rahal and RLL. Mick Schumacher, the odd man out, with RLL selling its third charter to Dreyer and Reinbold. And I guess that's the latest confirmation update, but also some reports out there from Joey Barnes at Motorsport that Meyer Shank Racing is looking into F1 driver Yuki Tsunoda to join the IndyCar ranks.
Yeah. I don't want to say a surprising name because we know he's been in an IndyCar before for a brief test. It was like a promotional test, but we know he's at least expressed some interest or, given some thought to IndyCar. But it just wasn't a name that I don't think I was expecting to hear. And I was wondering, we've gone through this whole silly season process, and for the most part, we haven't heard any F1 or F2 drivers in the discussion, which is rare, right? Like usually, and I don't know if the way that things have changed in IndyCar with just there being better drivers now and the charter system, if as far as F2 drivers go, if all F2 drivers will have to basically do the Kyle Collette route where Kyle went from F2 to Indy next, then to IndyCar, or if, we will start to see F2 to IndyCar happen again, like it happened, for much of the last 10 to 15 years. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, talking to MSR, I don't know if he's a front runner. I don't know. It seems as though the interest has come from his side, which isn't to say that there's no interest from MSR, but at least it seems as though Yuki kind of he and his management kind of initiated the conversation. All I know about this MSR seat is that it has been fluent and, kind of a casting a wide net from this team to figure out who exactly they want to pair next to Marcus Armstrong next year. And so we heard Kyle's name obviously come up. That was the first name we really heard about it, the open seat that they have. And Kyle this weekend essentially shut the door on it, or he left it cracked open a little bit, but he essentially said like those talks have died down and he doesn't think he's their number one option anymore. So I think you can kind of put that to rest. I think if Kaio is back in IndyCar next year, it'll be with AJ Foyt Racing. And so now you look at Yuki, you look at maybe a Mick Schumacher, still maybe a Rinus VK, and maybe there's still one other person who's not even in IndyCar right now, who this team is, having legitimate talks with. But I don't expect to hear from them as far as a decision before the season ends. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised with really anybody that they end up signing.
Yeah. So I think there's interesting layers to silly season. I think because largely, unless something is like signed, sealed, delivered, I don't think anybody's going to speak and risk jeopardizing either their future home or upset their current employer. Just in some interesting conversations I had over the weekend, but not that they're super great conversations, but I do think it's interesting, like, because you mentioned Rinus as a possibility for that second seat. I mean, you have to remember that like MSR has had that technical alliance with Chip Ganassi. And so like if CGR goes Lundgaard, like would they continue the partnership and then Rinus goes to MSR? Like, is that something that could happen?
I think it could. I know that for at least next year, the partnership is on. How that changes in 2028 with the new car and beyond, I'm not sure, but I have gotten confirmation that, because somebody whispered to me that maybe it wasn't happening anymore after this year, and I made sure to ask. And yes, those two teams, at least for next year, will still have a technical alliance. That's the weird thing with these alliances, is that it's not always clear how much input the better team has, right? You look at the two big ones in the paddock, and I think there is probably more, especially when it comes to drivers and whatnot. I think there's probably more input given from Penske to Foyt than there is from CGR to MSR, just from my understanding of things. But that's not to say there's none. Obviously, there was this whole back and forth Marcus Armstrong situation that existed over the last few years, and now we know he won't be going back to CGR for next year. And so I'm not sure where CGR comes into play with this. I think the bigger factor is Honda. We know in 2028 that Honda and MSR are almost becoming one when MSR is going to run that Honda car out of their shop. And so you look at it and you say, I think Honda has quite a bit of influence on what Meyer Shank does. Obviously, this team won the 500 this year, and I think they want to have at least one, if not two cars that they feel can win the 500. So after seeing this year's race, I think Marcus Armstrong belongs in the category of can win the 500. And so the question is, do you still want another one that you really feel confidently about that, or you just want to get the best overall, full season driver in that second seat? And so a lot of questions to be answered when it comes to that. I would love to get another F1 driver in the paddock, right? We have Mick for now, and we don't know if we'll have him here next year or not. But we've got him, and we've got obviously Romain and Marcus and Rossi as well. And so, adding another one would be kind of cool, especially one that has raced recently, because at this point, Mick is the only one of those guys I just named that has raced some F1 recently, and Yuki was just in F1 a year ago. So I don't know. I don't know where things go from here when it comes to MSR, and I don't know how much the Rinus thing is real, or if there is any Ganassi really input given there, or if MSR really doesn't need that, that approval necessarily to make this signing or not.
Yeah. The schedule flips to Freedom 250 in the nation's capital. How excited are you to go to Washington, D.C.?
It's a great city. I love the metro system, which I've been given no choice but to use because there's no parking anywhere for this. And I'm fine with that. That was not a complaint. I do like their metro system that they have there. And the scenery should be incredible. So that's what I'm excited for. And I don't know what to expect with this race once again.
Yeah, which is good. I don't know if it's going to be as... So, I don't know that the racing and, the on-track stuff is going to be as entertaining as Markham. But I think, everything surrounding the race is going to be, I mean, the closest you can get to the 500 without being the 500. So I'm curious to see like military involvement, you know, other entertainment opportunities. Like I don't know. I'm just fascinated to see what this is going to look like. And I know our colleague and reporter Joshua Haran has done a lot of legwork building out stories and telling the story of how this race came to be. You can find that on IndyStar.com right now. And yeah, I don't know what to expect either. I saw some of the, or I guess I've just seen like some of the sites that are going up, and I don't know. Looks fascinating, and there's going to be a ton of people there too.
Right, absolutely. And me and Josh are going to record. We settled that we'll do an extra Inside Line episode here in a couple of days as well. So that'll be, I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes of him explaining to me and everybody else the logistical aspects of this that maybe there are still questions about. But yeah, I'm excited. And from the racing perspective, I don't know if we mentioned this when they announced it a few weeks ago, but they extended the race length to 250 miles, which is an extremely long street race. The good news is that these laps are only going to be right around 55 seconds from what I've heard. That's what Alex Flo told me from him doing the sim. Obviously, as we know, we just learned the sims aren't always a 1-to-1, but the lap times will be under a minute. So it's not a 4-hour race necessarily, but it will be probably close to 3. So kind of buckle up for that if you're a fan. Be prepared for a race that's that long, because you don't get a lot of those besides Indy, essentially. So I'm curious to see the battle of endurance. I know the weather has kind of changed every time I've looked at it, but it's DC in August. So if it's not cloudy, it's going to be a wet, humid, disgusting day, which puts a lot of stress on the drivers and the teams just building the cars. You know, the hotter it gets, the more susceptible the cars are to breaking down, just having random mechanical failures. And you put 250 miles on top of that, and you're like, oh my. So I don't know what this race will look like. Lap by lap chaos. I don't think it'll be like Markham from that perspective, but when you make it a quote unquote endurance race, then anything can happen still.
AccuWeather shows a high of 86 on Sunday.
So not terrible.
That's much better than when I was there a month ago. I'll tell you that. It was like pushing 100, and it had you remember the bad smoke? I don't know if it was bad here in Indy, but like it was.
I don't think it was, but yes, I do remember seeing it.
In DC, it was noticeable. And there was like one day where I was like, I don't know that I'd need to go outside, except when you're in a hotel for a conference, you have to go find food at some point. Yeah. But it still was like not as bad as like Wisconsin and Minnesota. So was like grateful, but no, it looks like it's going to be a gorgeous weekend. Maybe some thunderstorms Thursday, Friday for people who are arriving early. We did talk about the extension of the race because I joked, really, I stole the joke from Twitter that the laps that they sacrificed in Nashville had just been moved and reallocated. So
that's right. I forgot about that.
Who are you going to pick to win? I can go first. If you want.
You go first. I know who I want to pick, but you go first. I want to hear your pick.
So I am going to go to the well here. This is going to I had a gamey question to ask you, and I totally forgot until just now. But I will give you my answer. The question was going to be who wins a race first, David Malukas or Will Power, and I'm picking Will Power. I picked him a couple times early in the season and it burned me, but I'm going to take him to win in DC.
Wow. That would be something. Interesting.
I mean, the Andretti, like, I don't know.
I mean, their street course package has been incredible, as we've seen. They've won 2 of them. Kyle Kirkwood was second in Detroit. He was also, I think, 4th in Long Beach. Like they've had it on the street courses for sure.
And asterisk this past weekend because he may have been on the podium had he not crashed.
I'm not going outside the box, but I am going a bit of a storyline. I think it'd be poetic. I think if you're displaying IndyCar, this is how you do it at the very least. Maybe it's not the most exciting way to do it, I'm picking Alex Palou to win this race and to win the championship this weekend.
Mm.
I feel like on this stage, your best driver is just going to find a way. Again, he's been great on street courses as well. Got 2 of those wins this year and has been top 5 on all of them, unless I'm missing something. So I have no reason really not to pick Alex Palou. And I told myself that he was going to win 2 more races after he won at Nashville. And I'm going to make this one the second one. I said at least 2. I think I said to myself. I think I'm going to make this one the second one. I think Alex Palou wins race number 7 this year and clinches his 4th straight IndyCar championship in the process.
We both picked Hondas, which I think is smart.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at it, and Chevy hasn't won a street race. I missed St. Pete. There was a race in my mind I was missing. Alex Palou has won 3 street races this year. He won St. Pete. So yeah, a Chevy hasn't won a street race this year. And I couldn't even tell you really off the top of my head which one was the closest. I know Scott McLaughlin finished second in St. Pete, but he was 12 seconds down. So Hondas have run the streets. I actually just got a notification about that from Honda's PR about how good they've been on street circuits this year. I haven't read it. It's happened 15 minutes ago during this podcast, but that's something they're trying to show off already. And yeah, I think they'll have a really good chance to go 6 for 6 on the streets this year, whether it's one of our 2 picks or somebody else.
I do want to circle back to another question I had that I did not think. I don't know. I'm such a good listener that sometimes the questions I have in my mind get pushed to the back burner because something else pops up. But with this being a new course, and it's the same thing that I sent in teams during the race on Sunday, like, I wonder if, like, with Markham specifically, and also now that we have another new course, because you had mentioned that the barriers were a complaint of the drivers, specifically the ones who crashed. Like, do we think that some of the troubles with Markham, with all the wrecks, is attributed to poor course design? Is it the sim not matching reality? Like, what can we expect coming out of this? Like, is it possible to have like a more realistic sim for the Freedom 250 and the drivers are maybe a little bit more prepared?
That's hard to say because I look back at Arlington and I say that was caution free until the very end. Mm-hmm. This is going to be an easier course to drive. I don't think there's a lot of sugarcoating that needs to be involved in this. It's a 1.7 mile course. It's 7 turns instead of 12 like Markham. And if you look at it, it's 6 left turns. There's 1 right turn on this whole course. It's 6 left turns. It is going to be an easier course to drive. I talked about how I watched Will Power do the Markham sim. I watched Alex Palou do the DC sim on YouTube, and it is night and day as far as, the level of difficulty. And that's just from a sim. And so from that aspect, it'll be easier. But I don't know what to expect. Again, it's just from it being so long, 250 miles, and you don't know what can happen in 250 miles, especially on a street race. So I think there is going to grow throughout the race an angst from drivers. If it is one of those races that it becomes hard to pass and hard to make moves, I think there is going to be, I think we get to 200 miles to the race, maybe a little bit less, and you just start to see drivers kind of start trying to send it in places where they probably shouldn't, just because of, the angst from that and just really wanting to make a move after almost sitting in a line all day. So that's where I think this race becomes interesting. And then, of course, the pit stops. We don't see street races with more than 3 pit stops. So now that it's longer, we're going to see 4 or 5. Maybe some cars do 6 of them. So seeing, which team's pit crews are really on their A game for a longer day than they're used to is also going to be something that plays a factor and a role in who wins this race, if you ask me. But I don't think it'll be as chaotic as Markham. I think Markham was just a pretty difficult track to get on the first time, especially when you didn't even know what your strategy should have been going in. This one, obviously, you don't know the strategy either, but it is just not, from an eyeball view, as tricky and difficult to drive.
So my answer is Will Power Who do you think wins first? Do you think David Malukas will get his first career win, or do you think Will Power gets his first win with his new team? And I'm not saying this week. I'm saying just in
Well,
general.
yeah, no, I got you. Here's what I don't love is that the flare up that David Malukas is having with this wrist injury. I don't love it. As far as the rest of this year goes, at least, I don't think it'll. I would hope that it doesn't bother him again in 2027, but it does seem like something he's going to have to live with for the rest of his career and just also the rest of his life, right? Like it happened and it's there. And so the fact that he has that, he has the knee bruise, which at this point is probably almost healed, but it still exists. And so just off the fact that I believe Will Power is pretty healthy right now, and I know he's driving great as we've seen. I think I lean with Will Power. If one were to get it done this year, at this point, I honestly think Will Power is more likely to do it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's just like if you charted their trend, like if you're charting momentum and trends, it just feels like there's a little different energy behind Will Power in his team right now.
I mean, we saw this weekend really the first time all season and one of the few times in his career, like real anger from David Malukas with whatever was going on with his brakes, and he was livid about that. And I think for a guy that usually all smiles and has really taken these, couple of close losses he's had this year pretty well, you can feel the anger starting to mount and just the frustration building as each week and each race goes by.
And yet he still tops the Penske charts this year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Joseph Newgarden had a really weird weekend. And he actually laughed it off yesterday. They were at the Empire State Building, and he said he appreciated Nolan Siegel taking him out of his misery. So not a great weekend for him. And then we've talked about it. It seems like every week as well with Scott McLaughlin and the now 32 race winless streak that he has going on, by far the longest of his driving career, not just his IndyCar career. Anywhere he's driven, he's never really gone this long without winning a race.
Okay, part two, because this just brought on another question. Which Scott gets it done first, McLaughlin or Dixon?
I love that question. As great as Scott Dixon has been throughout his career, I don't really know how my answer can't be Scott McLaughlin. Scott Dixon has one podium all year long. It just hasn't, the only moments where it felt like Scott Dixon was going to win a race was when we thought the races were going to end on red flags at the 500 and at Gateway. Outside of that, we have not gotten to the last stint of a race and been like, Scott Dixon's got it here, or he could have it here. Whereas Scott McLaughlin has had his moments. Nashville was a moment for him. The 500, to an extent, was a moment for him. I feel like there's another one I'm missing, but he's had his moment at the very least that have made it seem like he can get it done this year. Whereas Scott Dixon, I think this streak could be coming to an end this every year with a win. I just don't know if/where it comes from here for him going forward.
So Milwaukee scares me because I think Scotty Mack can get it done there. But I'm going to take Scott Dixon to do it at Aero McLaren next year. Okay. I just think a refresh, a restart, new car, different teammates, different mindsets and approaches. I'm going to say that he gets it next year before Scott McLaughlin wins his next race.
So do you think we get a first-time winner, like first time this season, this year? I guess you just picked Will Power. So, yes.
I mean, he's won before, just not at Andretti.
Well, and that's one. I mean, a first-time winner this year, not a first time in his career.
Yeah.
Essentially, what you're saying is, maybe we get Will, and then we get more Christian Lundgaard and Alex Palou in the season.
Yeah, or Raz.
Yeah,
Milwaukee.
Yeah. Or Joseph, even, which would be another. That'd be his third win of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we got Marcus last weekend. I would love if we got at least one more driver who hasn't won yet this year.
I mean, Pato wouldn't be first time, but Pato in Milwaukee, maybe.
Yeah, I know he'll be in contention there, and probably in Laguna as well. Yeah, I don't. I feel more comfortable about Scott McLaughlin, just because.
That's fair. I mean,
Well,
I can't argue against it.
And here's how I'll turn it around on you. What makes you say that Scott Dixon's first half of 2027 won't be like Will Power's first half of 2026?
I think there's just going to be more familiarity. At least with Pato, like, I don't know. And I mean, I haven't been to Andretti, but that Aero McLaren facility, it's going to be their second year in it. They're going to be, I think, a little bit more routine oriented.
Yeah. I'm going Scotty. I love that question. I was hoping that's where you were going when you started to add. I was like, yes, okay, thank you. But I'm going Scotty Mac personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's very fair. Yeah, I think some people, I think with like veteran drivers, there's always the question of like, why are they still in this? Like, are they even a threat? Are they washed? Are they like is this going to be competitive? Like, obviously, I have it pulled up. I mean, Scott Dixon is 12th and Will Power's 11th. So like, and neither of them have like really threatened. I mean, Will Power's got 4 top 5s, but Scott Dixon only has 1 this year. So like, I don't know. It's a fascinating question going into this week and next year. And yeah, I don't know. What food are you looking forward to for DC? If there is any.
I'm trying to think. I like DC because they have a little bit of everything. Like they've got some good soul food down there. I think they have some decent like Jamaican food. Like I don't know what exactly I'm looking forward to, but I know it'll be something. I know I'll get something good, and I know Josh has been there probably more than I've been there about 3 times, so not too bad. But I know Josh has probably been there more than me, just growing up on the East Coast. So I'll take his, yeah, I'll take his words for what to get.
He went to school there. He went to school at Howard.
Yeah, I know where Josh went to school.
Well, he's definitely been there more than both of us combined.
Yes. Well, do you count? You're right. He's been there more than me. Not that I didn't know that, but yes.
He might have been in DC longer than our entire sports department combined.
I don't even want to begin to think about that, but you're probably right.
We don't have enough time for that.
But yeah, that's yeah, I don't know. I'll ask him. I'll ask him on the pod. I said we'll set it up. We'll set it up. I'll ask him on. Yes. That'll be the end of our podcast on Thursday.
I love that. Yeah, see, you gotta come up with good games and like just random off the wall stuff that like I come out of nowhere with sometimes. You just gotta let your mind wander and say what's on your mind. That's
I'm thrilled to be there. It's funny just because we've been thinking about this all year, essentially, right? And like, now it's here. We're actually on the Freedom 250 week, and it's here. So I hope it goes smoothly from a logistical standpoint. But after this weekend, you never know.
Praying for sunshine.
That too, yeah. At this point, I'm used to the rain. It's like, it's like I live in Seattle.
I'm not letting my intrusive thoughts win with taking this somewhere else. So with that, check back later this week to hear from Zion and Josh all about Freedom 250, Washington, D.C. I look forward to listening just because, Josh has done a lot of reporting on it. It's going to be a fun weekend. I hope you guys have a blast. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that this job, we're allowed to have fun in our jobs. And so I hope it is fun because it's something that's different. One thing I will say, because again, the thoughts just always pop up. We talked about the schedule earlier and being word people. I have been hearing them say once in a lifetime experience, which makes me think we're not going to have another DC race. At least maybe not like this.
Yeah. DC wants another DC race. Miro Bowser wants another DC race. IndyCar wants to get through this race and then have talks.
Well,
and then
once in
maybe
a lifetime experience. Who knows what that ultimately means?
Yeah, I maybe it's because I don't talk to people from the national or DC government that often, but I lean on the side of what IndyCar has been telling us, that it's once in a lifetime, from what I know. But once again, I talk to people from IndyCar. I don't talk to, the Department of Transportation and the DC mayor's office.
Let's get our political team involved.
I mean, there will be USA Today folks there this weekend, so.
Well, enjoy that.
I will.
Our friends. Awesome. Well, this has been another edition of the Inside Line IndyCar podcast. Thanks always for joining us. Please go like and subscribe to the YouTube page, IndyStar TV :IndyCar. All the updates from the track, all the updates from off the track. You can watch us record our podcast there. And yeah, plenty more. Zion does a great job with it. Tell a friend to go like and subscribe. And same with this podcast, wherever you find your podcast. We hope that you enjoy this. Feel free to reach out to us anytime if you think we're out of our minds. I know I am, so I welcome it. But yeah, again, please help spread the word. And thanks again for listening to this episode. Remember to check back later this week. Zion and Josh preview DC again and how it came about. We will talk to you later.